For keeping my late husband's insurance from in-laws who chose a party over his funeral? My name is Rebecca and I am 29 years old. I was married to Daniel for 5 years, which truly felt like the blink of an eye and a whole lifetime at the same time. We met in college. He studied civil engineering and I studied accounting. We got married practically right after graduating when we still had that excitement of now the good part begins. Daniel got a job at a construction company and I joined a small accounting firm that was going through some restructuring. One of those places where everyone knows each other and the coffee is almost always watered down, but the environment is peaceful. With effort and patience, we bought a little house in a modest neighborhood in the southern suburbs of Atlanta. It had a small front yard and a white picket fence that made me laugh because it looked like something from a postcard. Yes, I know it sounds cheesy, but we loved it. Daniel spent his weekends fixing something, painting, or working in the yard. He always ended up with dirt all over his hands or paint on his shirt. And still he looked happy, as if that little piece of house was his favorite project. During those months we talked a lot about having kids. Daniel truly had that dream, the kind you can see in someone's eyes. He already had names picked out and everything. Rebecca, we are going to have the most beautiful kids. He would tell me when we were lying in the living room watching whatever was on TV. They are going to have your brains and hopefully my height. I was not desperate to get pregnant, honestly, but seeing him so excited rubbed off on me. It made me think, yes, I want that too. A few weeks before the accident, we went to visit a college friend of his, Brian, who lives about 2.5 hours away in the foothills. We left after lunch to avoid the worst of the traffic, and it still took us roughly that long. Brian had just become a dad and Daniel was extremely excited to meet the baby. We had a good time, ate, talked, and Daniel spent the whole afternoon holding Noah, Brian's son, making faces at him and asking 1,000 questions, as if he were taking an intensive parenting course. On the way back, at first everything was normal. We were talking about returning soon and Daniel jokingly said he was going to be a better dad than Brian, because he was going to teach our kids to play soccer properly, to shoot penalty kicks, to set up a pickup game and not just sit on the couch watching matches. It had rained heavily that day and the pavement was still wet. Daniel drove carefully as always. He was one of those drivers who wait, who use their turn signals, who slow down where there is a curve even if no one else does. We were already on our way back, near the entrance to the more urban area, when we entered a sharper curve. Daniel slowed down. I remember perfectly because I even told him, "I am glad you are taking it slow." And out of nowhere, a car swerved into our lane. It was coming fast, too fast. Everything happened in seconds. Daniel turned the steering wheel to avoid the head-on collision. I screamed. I heard the crash of metal against metal and felt my chest tighten from the scare. The other car hit us on Daniel's side. After that I have no clear images, only sensations. Spinning, my body out of control, the noise, and then a dull thud. Later I found out we hit a utility pole and then nothing. Black. I woke up in the hospital 3 days later. Everything hurt. My head was buzzing as if it were being squeezed from the inside. My left arm was in a cast and I had bandages in several places. A nurse approached when she saw I opened my eyes. "Ma'am, how are you feeling?" I did not even know what to answer. The first thing that came out was, "And Daniel, where is Daniel?" The nurse gave me that look you never forget. She did not answer me, she just turned around and went for the doctor. A few minutes later Dr. Reynolds came in, an older, gray-haired man, with that kind of seriousness that anticipates the worst. He sat near me and spoke slowly. "Rebecca, I am so sorry. Your husband did not survive the accident. He died on impact." I do not know if I screamed. I do not know how long I cried. I only remember feeling like I could not breathe, as if a hole had been left in my body. "We sedated you because you got very upset," they told me later. When I woke up again, the doctor explained my injuries. A broken arm, 3 cracked ribs, a concussion, cuts and bruises all over. "You were very lucky," he told me. "On the outside, maybe. Inside, I did not feel lucky about anything." The next day an officer came to talk to me. He explained that the other driver was drunk at 3 in the afternoon on a Sunday. He swerved into our lane and kept going for a good stretch before losing control and crashing further ahead. He survived with minor injuries. My husband did not. I spent that day as if in a fog. The nurses came in and out. I nodded or shook my head without really listening. A hospital psychologist, one of those who provide grief support, tried to talk to me. I watched her speak and felt her voice coming from far away. In my head, there was only one sentence. Daniel wanted to be a dad and now he was gone. On the third day of being conscious, I gathered the courage to call my parents. Not out of pride, not out of habit, but out of necessity. I was alone in a hospital bed with my body shattered and my world broken. I needed my mom. I needed my dad. My mom, Karen, answered. She sounded distracted, as if she were doing something else. Hello, Mom, it is Rebecca. Oh, hi, honey. What happened? I am busy right now. I swallowed hard. Mom, Daniel and I had a car accident. I paused because my throat closed up. He did not survive. Daniel died. There was silence for a few seconds. Then my mom blurted out, "Oh, Rebecca, how terrible. We are so sorry." And that was it, just like that, as if I had told her my refrigerator broke down. Mom, I am in the hospital. I cannot do this alone. I need you to come with Dad. I need help organizing Daniel's arrangements. I cannot even walk right. My mom replied with a calmness that left me freezing. Honey, you are calling at a really bad time. Stephanie just got a promotion, and this weekend we are throwing her a lunch celebration at home. Everything has been planned for weeks, and besides, the family trip to Miami leaves in a few days. We cannot change anything. I was speechless. Mom, my husband died. Yes, Rebecca, I understand, but Stephanie has worked very hard. And besides, isn't Daniel's family there, his parents, his sister? They can take care of it, right? And she hung up on me. Just like that. I stared at the phone screen for 10 minutes without understanding. Daniel was dead, I was in a hospital, and my parents were worried about a lunch celebration and a trip. An hour later, Daniel's parents, George and Susan, arrived, along with his sister Nicole. I always got along well with them. They were not perfect, but they loved each other, they took care of each other, they spoke the truth. As soon as they entered my room, we cried. George hugged me carefully so as not to hurt me and said, Rebecca, we are going to get through this. You are not alone. Susan grabbed my hand, trembling, and told me, Daniel loved you. He talked about you all the time. Nicole was the one who took the most action. She brought me clothes from home, helped me wash my hair in the hospital sink, and got me basic things I had not even thought of. Do not worry about anything, she would tell me. We will take care of the wake, the funeral service, the cemetery. You just focus on recovering. There was a wake that same week. I could not go. I was still too unwell. Nicole brought me her phone and put me on a video call for a little while just to hear the prayers and feel, even from a distance, that they were saying goodbye with respect. I did not tell them about my parents. I was too ashamed. There they were, devastated over losing their son, and yet taking care of me, moving heaven and earth so I would not carry the whole burden. Meanwhile, my parents could not even skip a lunch celebration. I did not sleep that night. I stared at the hospital ceiling and unintentionally started going back in time. Years of little things that put together were no longer little. It had always been like this with Stephanie. Ever since we were girls, Stephanie got into trouble at school. She would skip class, talk back, turn in assignments late. When they called my parents, they defended her. She gets bored because the level is too low for her, my mom would say. The teachers do not understand her creativity. I, on the other hand, was the one with perfect attendance, good grades, the one who stayed quiet and did what was asked. When I brought home awards, my dad would say good. And he stuck them on the fridge for a week until they got lost among grocery lists and receipts. In high school, Stephanie barely passed. I spent my life studying. When it came to college, they paid for tutoring courses, whatever it took for Stephanie to get into an expensive private school. To me, they said, "You are smart, you will figure it out." I got into a good university with a scholarship, and even so, at the dinner table they talked more about Stephanie, about how special she was, about how much she was achieving, even if she never finished anything. When Stephanie dropped out of college halfway through to find herself, my parents applauded her, letting her live in the house without contributing anything for years. When I graduated and got my first job, the question was, "And when are you moving out? We want to use your room so Stephanie has her own space." Even at my wedding, Stephanie stole the spotlight. She arrived late because she had a bad hair day. At the reception, she had too much to drink and asked for the microphone to give some sort of speech that sounded like disguised mockery. I am proud of Rebecca because she finally found someone who can put up with her. Daniel got mad and I told him to let it go. That was just how my family was. The worst part was that they always found an excuse for everything. If she got fired from a job, it was because they did not value her ideas. If she crashed my dad's car because she was on her cell phone, it was because the other guy was not careful. If she went into debt with credit cards buying unnecessary things, it was because she deserved it. She had worked so hard, and now when I needed help to say goodbye to my husband, they were busy celebrating a promotion. The following days in the hospital passed as if someone had turned down the volume of the world. Daniel's family visited daily. They brought me food, gave me updates on the service, asked if I needed anything. George and Susan took care of everything with the funeral home, the church, the cemetery, the paperwork. Nicole even brought me clothes for the service and helped me choose what to wear because I could not even stand up. She brought me makeup and told me, "Daniel would want to see you looking nice." He always showed off his wife. 3 days before the service, I decided to give my family one last chance. I sent a text message to my mom with all the details. Date, time, place. The funeral service for Daniel is on Thursday at 11 in the morning at the church nearby. Afterwards we are going to the cemetery. I really hope you can come. I need you. She replied 2 hours later. Rebecca, tomorrow we are leaving with Stephanie. With the promotion she got a bonus and invited us to Miami for a week. We cannot cancel. Stephanie worked very hard and deserves to celebrate. We are sorry. We will not be able to make it. I stared at the message with cold hands. Miami Beach, son. While I was going to bury my husband, I called Stephanie. She answered quickly, happy, as if she were expecting the call. Rebecca, Mom told me about Daniel. So sad. She made a tiny pause as if just to check a box and then with excitement. But, hey, guess what? We are going to Miami. I got a big bonus and wanted to do something special with the family. Stephanie, the service is on Thursday. Can you not move the trip a few days? Her voice changed immediately. It turned cold. Rebecca, I am not going to change my plans. People die all the time. That is life. But I do not get promoted often. I want to celebrate with my parents. They are proud of me. You are talking about my husband. He was my brother-in-law, Rebecca. I barely knew him. And it is not like moving the trip is going to bring him back. Stop the drama already. I did not answer. I hung up. My strength left me and I threw the phone against the hospital room wall. And that was when it hit me completely like a silent blow. My family did not love me. Not the way I had tried to believe. I was the one who functioned so they could feel good, the responsible one, the one who did not cause problems, the perfect comparison to justify Stephanie. But when my life broke apart, they did not even make an attempt. Thursday dawned gray and drizzly. The hospital lent me a wheelchair because I was still walking poorly. Daniel's family picked me up and took me to the church. It was full. Daniel's co-workers from the construction company, friends, neighbors, cousins, people who truly loved him. Daniel was one of those guys who remembers your birthday, who helps you move a couch without being asked, who makes you feel seen. Throughout the entire service, I kept looking back with an absurd hope that my parents would show up, even if they were late. Not a single one arrived. Afterwards, at the cemetery, while they lowered the casket, Nicole approached slowly and asked me in a low voice, "Rebecca and your family? We thought they were going to come." I felt a flush of shame on my face. I did not want to say it, but I did. They went on a trip. Stephanie got a promotion, and they did not want to miss her celebration. George and Susan looked at each other without saying anything. Nicole tightened her mouth as if holding herself back and only said, "Rebecca, your family always seemed off to me, but this is unforgivable." After that, I stayed 1 more week in the hospital. The doctors wanted to monitor the concussion, make sure I did not get dizzy when walking, and that the pain went down. Daniel's family was there every day. They helped me with rehabilitation exercises, brought me books, sat with me when I did not want to talk. When they finally discharged me, George and Susan took me home. Opening the door and walking in without Daniel was the hardest thing I have ever experienced. Everything was just as we left it. His coffee mug in the sink, his boots by the entrance, notes on the fridge in his handwriting. Buy milk, do not forget light bulbs. The silence was heavy. Nicole helped me sort through clothes and personal items. We donated a lot, but I kept his favorite flannel shirt and his wedding ring. George sat with me to start figuring out the paperwork that comes when someone dies. Procedures, joint accounts, insurance, things nobody teaches you. A couple of weeks later, when I could finally sit up without getting dizzy and walk slowly without feeling like the floor was disappearing, I went to see Mr. Bennett, the lawyer who had helped Daniel buy the house and with his will. I expected something simple, a normal life insurance policy, a little bit of savings. The lawyer spread papers across the desk. Rebecca, Daniel was very careful. By will, you inherit everything. The house, the accounts, his retirement fund. I figured that much, but then he continued. Additionally, your husband had 2 insurance policies. One was from the company, the typical benefits one, and the other he took out on his own a while ago, precisely so you would be protected if anything happened. Between the two, they total $500,000. And you are the sole beneficiary. I felt like I couldn't breathe. $500,000? Yes. And there is another smaller policy of $25,000 meant to cover funeral expenses. I walked out of there as if I were wading through water. Daniel never told me the exact amount. I knew he had insurance, of course, but not that much. And even with all that, my first thought was not that my life was now set, it was, I would trade it all to have you here. Money does not sit with you in the living room, it does not hug you, it does not say, I am home. Money does not fill the silence. I asked for 2 more weeks off work to get settled. My boss was understanding and let me come back gradually. Work helped because it forced me to think about something else. About a month passed since the accident, and for the first time I had a week without weird calls, without sudden scares, without people demanding anything. I was still grieving, but I could now get up, make myself something to eat, and get through an afternoon without feeling like I was going to break at any moment. Daniel's family called me often, and I was seeing a grief therapist one day at a time. And then, around the 5th week on a Saturday afternoon, I heard cars parking in front of my house. I peeked out the window and saw my parents' sedan and Stephanie's SUV. My stomach sank. They knocked on the door. I opened it. My mom walked in with a smile that did not reach her eyes and gave me a quick hug. Rebecca, honey, how are you? We have been very worried. My dad, Robert, looked around as if he were evaluating the place. Stephanie walked slowly through the living room, touching things, like someone visiting an apartment for rent. Stephanie grabbed one of Daniel's photography awards, lifted it and said, What a nice house, you have a lot of space. I felt a cold anger. What do you want? I asked. My mom sat on the couch and patted the cushion next to her. Can we not come see our daughter? We wanted to know how you are handling your loss. My loss? I stared right at her. You mean Daniel's death? The service you did not go to because you went to Miami? A silence fell. Stephanie was the first to speak, as always. Rebecca. We were in shock. We did not know how to react. That is why we left. We needed time to process. I looked at her and thought she could not even pull off the lie well. What do you want? I repeated. My parents looked at each other. My mom cleared her throat. Well, we found out from Mrs. Henderson, your longtime neighbor, that you received a large payout from Daniel's insurance. I remembered that call. Mrs. Henderson had asked me how I was going to pay for everything, and I, still dazed, said something like, the life insurance is going to cover the expenses. And that was enough. My mom continued, with the voice of someone asking for a simple favor. We thought you could help Stephanie. She is looking at apartments and needs money for the down payment. With $250,000, she could buy a really nice place. $250,000. Half of my dead husband's life insurance so my sister could buy an apartment. My dad finally spoke seriously, as if he were giving a lecture. Rebecca, Stephanie has worked very hard. She deserves a good place, and you have more than enough. I looked at the 3 of them sitting in my living room. In the living room where Daniel and I talked about kids, where we planned a future, where I now ate dinner alone. And I understood something that hurt because of how clear it was. I did not know them, or maybe I did, but I had spent years making excuses for them. Get out, I said. Rebecca, do not be selfish, my mom replied. Stephanie is your sister. Please get out of my house, I repeated louder. Stephanie stood up with a hardened face. You are being completely irrational. We are family. Family helps each other. My voice trembled. And where was my family when I was in the hospital? Where were you when I needed to say goodbye to Daniel? You care about me right now because you think you can take my money? Not because of me. They left with tight lips. My mom still looked back at the door as if expecting me to change my mind. I did not. When I closed it, I sat on the couch and cried for 2 hours. Not out of sadness, but out of rage, exhaustion, out of everything I was finally seeing without filters. I thought it would end there, that they would feel ashamed and go away. I was wrong. The next day the calls started. My mom dialed 6 times. When I finally answered, she said, Rebecca, we have to talk about this with a cool head. Stephanie needs that money and you are being very stubborn. I hung up. Then Stephanie called. I cannot believe you are being like this. I am your sister. I have never asked you for anything. That was a lie. Stephanie had asked me for money 1,000 times to get out of a tight spot and never paid me back. I hung up again. Then my dad left a super long voicemail saying he was disappointed in my selfishness, that Daniel would be ashamed of me for turning my back on family. That message ignited something inside me. I blocked their numbers. They did not give up. They started writing to me from other people's phones. My Aunt Diane, my dad's sister, sent me messages telling me to think carefully, that this should be settled in private, not to expose the family. I did not answer. In fact, Diane even wanted to summon me to talk at my parents' house as if I were the one who had to apologize. And then I understood that what hurt them was not Daniel nor me, it was their image. So, my mom decided to make it public. She uploaded a very long post on Facebook, a tearful story saying that her daughter had received money and was refusing to help the family in a difficult time. She did not mention Daniel. She did not mention that they went on a trip the day of the service. She did not say why that money existed. She painted it as if I had won something and was being greedy. The comments started rolling in. Cousins, acquaintances, people from my parents' church, neighbors saying how awful, how is that possible, that one should support their sister. I saw that and felt the heat of injustice rising inside me. 2 days later I could not take it anymore. I made my own post. I told everything with dates and calmly. I explained that my husband died in a car accident, that I was hospitalized, that I asked for help to organize the farewell, and they told me no because they had a lunch celebration and a trip for my sister's promotion. I posted text message screenshots where my mom said they were going to Miami and could not go to the service. I posted the screenshot where Stephanie wrote to me word for word. People die all the time, it is no reason to stop enjoying. I also uploaded parts of messages where they called me selfish for not giving them $250,000 for an apartment. The reaction was immediate. This time the comments were not against me, they were against them. They went on a trip instead of being with you to bury your husband? Asking a widow for money from her husband's life insurance is despicable. Do not give them anything. They already showed who they are. What a shameful family. My mom's post disappeared quickly, but it was too late. My post was shared. Screenshots were taken. Within a week half the world knew. 2 weeks later I received an email from my mom. Not a call, not a message, a formal email as if a company were speaking to me. It said in short that my spectacle had shamed the family, that they were outraged by my greed and my lack of loyalty, and that from that moment on they were cutting all contact with me. That I was no longer welcome in their house, that they would never reach out to me again, and that she hoped I was happy choosing money over family. I stared at the screen and let out a dry laugh at the audacity. Them telling me that, them who only showed up when they smelled money. Them who went to the beach when I was burying my husband. And still what I felt afterwards was not pain, it was relief. As if for the first time in my life a burden I did not even know I was carrying had been lifted off me. I no longer had to compete for their attention, I no longer had to prove I was worthy. Meanwhile, Daniel's family continued to be what they always were, people who showed up. When I told them about the Facebook drama and the email, Susan shook her head and told me, Rebecca, you are better off without people like that around. And there I made a decision that came from my heart. Around Thanksgiving, in one of those family dinners we have before the holidays really hit, I invited George, Susan, and Nicole for dinner. I wanted to thank them. I wanted to feel at home without feeling guilty. I cooked what Daniel liked during that season. I baked a turkey, used Susan's recipe for the stuffing, made mashed potatoes, apple salad, and a simple pasta. I considered making dessert, but that day I barely had the strength to stand up. After dinner, I told them I needed to talk to them. My palms were sweating. I have been thinking a lot about Daniel's life insurance. I started. I know he wanted me to be okay, but I also know how much he loved you. And I want you to have peace of mind. I want to give you half. $250,000. They fell silent. Susan put her hand to her mouth and her eyes filled with tears. Rebecca, no, we cannot accept that. George shook his head. That money is yours. Daniel did it for you. Nicole looked at me as if she did not know what to say. I took a deep breath. Daniel truly loved you. And I also love you. You were there when no one else was. I never want you to struggle, please. It was hard to convince them. They did not want to out of pride and respect. In the end, they accepted on one condition. That everything be put in writing, that no one could ever use it to confuse things, and that I would continue to feel like part of the family. We signed a simple agreement with Mr. Bennett, and once the paperwork was in order, I made the transfer at the bank with the proper authorization. It was not in a single transaction. We scheduled it in 2 parts so there would be no issues. Everything was made clear. That was 6 months ago. Today I am doing okay, all things considered. I miss Daniel every day. There are moments when the memory hits me as if it were the first week. But I have learned to be alone without feeling abandoned. I am still at my job because it helps me keep my mind busy. I keep going to grief therapy. I live in the house Daniel and I bought, with his folded shirt in a drawer and his note still stuck on the fridge because for some reason seeing his handwriting calms me. I am not ready to date anyone. I do not know if I ever will be. Not right now. I have enough money to live peacefully, yes, but the most important thing is something else. I have people who worry about me, truly. I have not heard anything from my parents or Stephanie since that email. Sometimes I wonder if Stephanie got her apartment. Then I remember how she spoke to me, how they left, how they came into my living room to size up my things with their eyes, and I get over it. Daniel's family became my family. We eat together on Sundays. They include me in everything. Nicole calls me sister and she means it. George and Susan treat me like a daughter. Like parents should treat their children. In the end, I understood something that took me years to accept. Family is not always blood. Family is whoever stays when your world falls apart. And I finally have one. Comment. I've been thinking a lot about this story lately, and it really hit me how important it is to protect our own peace. You know, sometimes we have to set clear boundaries, even with the people we love most. I believe that true family shows up when things get tough, not just when it is convenient. It reminds me that choosing self-respect is not selfish, but necessary for healing. When we surround ourselves with kindness and responsibility, life starts to feel lighter. I hope you take a moment today to reflect on the relationships in your own life. Are there any that drain you instead of lifting you up? Learning to let go of what no longer serves us can open the door to real peace. And remember, you deserve people who choose you every single day. That is the kind of love that helps us grow stronger. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.